Here's the thing. This is a weird thing to talk about because it's something nationalism is something we're so enmeshed in that it's a real difficult thing to think our way out of, um, or to sort of see ourselves from the outside of it. Yeah, I don't even know where to go with that. It's other than the fact that this is a really hard topic to talk about. It's much easier in front of everybody. I don't have that privilege right now, so we're just going to keep going. Um, what is nationalism? Like, what is it about being, and forgive me, everybody who's not an American, what is it about being an American that makes American American? In fact, I want you to hit pause, and if you're Swedish, if you're Brazilian, whatever, I want you to hit pause, and I want you to write down a few things when you think of American, Brazilian, Swedish, whatever your nationality is. I want you to write down a few things that you associate with that. So take a pause and then write that down. I'm just going to. Okay, pause over. Um, This is the thing about nationalism. Nationalism isn't a real thing, but it's a real thing. I know that's a horrible way to say this, but okay, so if we have states, let's start here. We have these states, and these are the things that make up, the international community. I even using the word international, it's got nation right in it. Um, who is in this state? Here's state A, and here's state B. Now the question becomes, why is somebody in this state and not in this state? And the answer is because history has basically evolved in particular ways, blah, blah, blah. But it could very easily have evolved very differently. So the question then becomes, the way that I'm in this state, every state has a nation. The state has a nation as well. And that's what keeps those two things separate. I know there's borders and there's things like that, but why are the borders there and not 50 miles further north or 50 miles further south? It's not just about conquering or anything like that. It's about who we think we are. Ooh, this is so bad. Here's the deal. The job of nationalism is to unify individuals, to create what we're going to call as a people, the American people, the Swedish people, the Finn people, the Norwegian people. I mean, there are differences. Now, here's the thing. There's differences, but there's not really differences. The differences are, in a sense, made up, but to a certain degree, we believe them to be differences, which means we act on them as differences to the point where they're no longer made up. Ooh, man, why is this coming out so weird? One of the things, this is the language I'd like you to think about. A guy named Benedict Anderson. Benedict Anderson here. He wrote this book back in 1993 called Imagined Communities, which is, again, thinking about nations as imagined communities. We imagine them to be true, and that makes them true. Again, this sounds really weird, but think about money. We all collectively have this collective delusion that this green piece of paper, if I hand it to you, it's worth $1. That's a collective delusion. We're all kind of believing this. But if we all really believe it, it actually turns out to be a true thing. And that's what we mean by this. When I say it's an imagined community, I don't mean that there's no such thing as America. There is such thing as America, but there could have been something else. This is what it is. And it's still a thing that we imagine. We could imagine it in any way we want to. So it's not a thing that is fixed or anything like that. Though imagined, it is still very real. Whew, man, this is... To be honest with you, I'm not sure this would be going any better if I was in front of you. But let's just keep going. One of the key things about this is and when I say this nationalist ideology up here, what I mean is this is sort of how the world works right now. The world works in terms of nations. I know we've talked about this before, but your identity out there in the world is your passport or your citizenship. You're not you. You are your nationality, your citizenship. And that's how not just the United States is sort of organized, but it's how all the states are organized, which means it's how people are organized. Whether we really want that to be the case or not, that's sort of the way that it is. And so nations play a huge role in terms of forming humanity into teams. I know that's not a great way to put it, but that's kind of what it is. And then once we're on this team, well, you guys know, if you've ever rooted for a sports team, like there's no real reason why I should care if this particular sports team wins or that one loses. And yet, you know, my happiness or sadness for that day is wrapped up in them winning or losing. That's such a made up, weird thing, and yet it's super, super real. Same thing here. Part of our who we are, our identity, is wrapped up in this thing right here. And so we have a real stake in what that means and how it's perceived. So when we talk about this nationalist ideology, like what do people everywhere, not just in America, not just in Sweden, but what do people everywhere think about when we think about nation? Number one is nationalism unifies individuals. Number two is that each nation is unique, or at the very least I can say my nation is unique. Are the rest of them unique? Sure. What do I know? I don't care. What I know is that mine is unique. That doesn't necessarily mean it's better than, but you can understand how it gets very quickly can evolve from my nation is unique to my nation is the best. The belief then becomes that humans are naturally divided into nations. Now, they're not. On the one hand, I guess you could say they are in the sense that I am born in America, which makes me an American. But that's more a trick of law rather than it's a trick of then it's a thing of reality that we are naturally this way, that sort of God ordained it this way. That was kind of a belief of the 19th century, not so much a belief that we have anymore, though we sometimes fall into this idea that they are different than us. So our nation's natural or constructed, imagined, and I'm going to lean very heavily on this right here, that they're not natural, that they are constructed. We just don't think this anymore, but you can read older ways of thinking about nationalism that sort of have that. Another idea about this uniqueness is each nation has its own particular character. What it means to be American is what is different than what it means to be Japanese. Again, I want to stress that doesn't mean that one is better than the other, but you can see how that sort of talk can lead to that one is better than another very quickly. All right, you're going to watch some more videos, and then we're going to come back and keep talking about nationalist ideology. What does it mean? What is nationalism? How does it play out in the global world? Global world? What the heck?